It's ironic that our comfort zone, the space where you think we would feel most comfortable to try something new, is often what's holding us back. In part 2 of my conversation with Ross, we dig into the idea of how leaving a legacy for our future often depends on our mindset in the present, which in turn was shaped by our experiences in the past. You just have to be brave enough to step out of your comfort zone and make a change. Like Ross shared, it's either the pain of change in the moments ahead or the pain of regret when you look back. The good news, you aren't locked in, and you can always make a change. In this episode, we journey through life's experiences, society's expectations, and arrive at the realization that we can create a legacy that will ripple into the future for generations to come. You are the change you've been waiting for. Let's rejoin part 2 of our conversation with Ross. Welcome to Mind Game, a podcast to level up your life. My name is Stephanie Painshaw, and I'm excited for you to join me on a journey behind the scenes where we'll dig into the stories of resilience, mindset, and unlock the simple habits that will help you change the game. Before we dive in, I want to express our gratitude for your continued support. Your energy powers our quest to provide content that encourages you to unlock new levels of personal growth and step out of your own comfort zone. If you're inspired by an idea or have a suggestion for a future topic, connect with us at mindgamelevelupyourlife.com. Your feedback is a power-up that helps us continue on this epic adventure. So if you're ready to get out of your own way and explore what you didn't know you needed to know, you've come to the right place. So buckle up, open up your mind. It's time to level up. You said a few things there, and that whole idea of that mindset and how we interact with, like, it is money makes the world go round. And so
Mhm.
often we think, well, it's bad if I want to have more money, or it's bad to even talk about it with other people. But people are going through the same things. Every time I do the podcast, I'm like, I think we all have more in common with each other than we realize. But it's that identifying it and thinking, okay, so how do we tackle this challenge, and how do we respond to this, or what's my next first step for that. But that idea that we shift our money management or our money mindset, not the management is kind of that secondary piece, so that, like you said
Amen.
earlier, when we get into a lower when we're stressed, when we have sort of a negative money mindset, then that lowers our vibrational energy, and then we attract more at that vibrational level. So we're actually, like you said, attracting more debt and more bills. And
Yeah.
so it can be really hard to flip out of that. But if we can do different things, and that's the goal of the podcast, is to meet people that can help us flip our mindset into that higher frequency, to think, okay, what is it going to feel like when that $1,000 check arrives in the mail, or that $10,000 investment turns into $100,000? How
No,
are you going to feel
exactly.
when you go into the bank and you sit down and you look at the numbers in your account and they say you can do pretty much anything you want with this? So how can you start to visualize that? Because the brain doesn't know the difference between what happened in the past and what happened in the future. If
Mhm.
you can emotionally feel that attachment to that future event, then you can begin to shift your emotions, which is the chemical response in your body, and that can help to start move you in that way. So I think that you mentioned several things there, that it is like that backpack, all of
Mhm.
these things on your back. So if you could set one of those off, imagine how much lighter you could
Yes.
be. And it does make a difference every time that you connect with somebody else and have that conversation, and even shift one small habit. That's still something that we didn't know before, or we're holding on to an old belief about money that's limiting us from doing those next pieces. And procrastination, I'm good at that. I also need to do taxes, so it's tax season for everybody. We should have just an episode on how to organize yourselves
Yes.
for tax season. But I did go to a webinar, or maybe it was pre-COVID, when you went to things in person, way back
Mhm.
when. Uh, she said, what was it? Taxes. She said, when you think about taxes, so they take that off your check. She said, instead of being like, the government took that again,
Mhm.
and they take it every month, and that's such a, they always take it from me. She said, what if you flip that into, I drive on roads, mostly in Saskatchewan, that don't have giant potholes. I am able to go to the
Yes,
hospital
exactly.
when I need to. I'm able to access health care. That helps put the kids in my community through school. And so if we can start to flip, it's not always easy when you write the check for the cost of the tax for your house or things, some of those bigger things.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to get better at thinking when I pay the bill, that yes pays for the energy to keep my house warm, but it also pays for the people who are employed in those jobs, and that feeds their family. Like it's all interconnected. So it's trying to flip out some of those pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody likes paying taxes for sure. But, I think we live in a pretty great country that whether that tax money has been being paid uh, correctly, that's a whole nother podcast. That's more of a political podcast. But,
Yes.
but I think just,
Yeah, we're not
yeah,
going down that political
no, we don't want to go
political
down that
path,
hole.
but just that idea that what that our taxes should be to fund the
Yeah.
country and make things available for us that together we can do more with that. But that is a whole
Yeah.
other podcast. But I was thinking more of it in that mindset. Like, let's flip it. Like, I pay those, so that provides a school for kids to go to school. It provides
Mhm.
healthcare for it provides in Saskatchewan. In Canada, we have healthcare and we take it for granted. So when I've been fortunate enough to travel and meet people, even from the States,
Yeah.
and they talk about the cost of medication, or I can't afford that, or I met someone who needed a heart transplant, but they needed $750,000 before they could have the heart transplant. So yes, you're not feeling well, but you have to wait because it's expensive. So I think there's lots of ways that we are fortunate. And I did wonder
Yes.
earlier on we haven't got to the what would you tell your future, or no, not your future self, your younger self yet, but you have 3 children who I don't feel that old, but they're all grown up. Your last one's in
Yes.
grade 12. He'll be done school soon. Sadie just got her learner's license. That's a whole other podcast. And what does it feel like to sit in the passenger seat while your child learns to drive? But if you were to think about a habit that you would share with, as a parent, what would be one of the things that you would share with your children about money?
I think just to be aware of it, you know, I always go back to just get into a habit of having that budget, getting a habit of putting away money for yourself. Um, and I don't be afraid to step out of the box and make more money. I know,
Mhm.
like I was kind of saying, I've had all kinds of different jobs in my lifetime. I was never afraid to stop one job and go to another job just straight, not because, like, just because I made more money doing it. That's how I've always been in my
Right.
life. I'd be at a job for 3 years. I'd change total careers from, say, like, as a meat cutter for a lot of years when I was younger and just go right into trucking and go from trucking right into mining. And my whole life has kind of been like that. And it kind of helped having that mindset for when I jumped over to this. I was hesitant because of it's not blue collar like I'm used to, but I've always had that mindset of, it's going to suck off the bat, but it's going to
Yes.
get better. And when you talk about, I know you're going to ask me, I think it really ties in well right now. You're going to ask me like one of my favorite quotes.
Okay. So, what is one of your favorite quotations? Because I love quotations. And so I'm always curious what other people find inspiring or that is a good reminder to themselves.
And like, there's so many, like you see so many good quotes on Facebook. I'm always, somebody will have in their story a good thing. I will like it and take a snapshot of it and put it on my own story kind of stuff because there's so many out there. But around the time when I was starting, thinking about getting licenses in finance, I saw a slide and and the slide said, which is worse, the pain of change or the pain of regret? And it really kind of stuck, if I don't at least try this, am I going to regret it years down the road? And that was one of the things that I always talk about with my branch manager because he's the one that actually had this slide up at the office, and it really
Okay.
resounded to me. I remember looking at Lisa, and after I saw uh, that slide up on screen or whatever. Um, I remember looking at her and I said, well, now I have to do it because now I'll always be thinking about that, that pain of regret, I think is way more than the pain of change. The pain of change is, temporary when you start something, but the pain of regret years down the road, it's going to last way longer than that pain of change. And so it's always been kind of one that I've always thought about when there's any kind of changes in your life or something like that, that it's temporary, you know, it's going to get better. So that's one that I use quite often and think about quite often in my life when I'm doing whatever.
I like that one. And see, the podcast is always like a reminder to me that change is just part of life. I was walking and I always listen to motivational talks while I'm walking. And one of the speakers said, change is life. Like life is change. It's just always changing. It's never going to be exactly the same. And I have a decorative thing upstairs that says, these are the good old days, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, remember when, but you're living it right now. So enjoy what you're doing right now. I appreciate what you're saying that definitely change is hard and it's going to be hard off the start and it's a steep learning curve and some days it takes a lot to stay in that positive mindset that okay, I can keep going and keep putting one foot in front of the other because it will get better. But the pain of regret of not doing that at the end of the lifetime, if you listen to Jane McGonigal, she talks about what are the things that people regret at the end of their life. And she used that to come up with the idea of super better and how do we build resilience so that we don't get to the end of end of our lives and regret all of those things. But and if you don't like it, you can change again, right? Like you can do that for a bit and then you can change and you can keep evolving. And that made me think of you mentioned a couple of times the being an entrepreneur, right?
Mhm.
And lots of times I know when I was growing up, you could be a teacher, you could be a doctor, you could go into business and you should do this or you should do that. And then I think it was my mom or my dad said, like, what is it that you really love to do? Do you what if teaching is that, then it's not about the money, it's about what you love to do
Mhm.
every day. However, teaching is still a pretty fixed having dabbled in network marketing and other side businesses and things like that, there's a whole other level of what you can do and income that you can generate and not being on a salary. It's scary.
Mhm.
Like Lisa in real estate, right? Sometimes everybody needs a house and then sometimes there's no houses to
Yes.
sell,
No,
which seems to
exactly.
be some of the current challenges. So it's that I admire people who have that entrepreneurial mindset that can step out of that comfort zone and go for it because it's pretty comfortable in there. Like you talked about having your mining salary, right? That makes it safe for us. It's a safe way to dabble because it's comfortable. I think I have watched friends really excel in different entrepreneurial pieces, and I think they went all in. They burned the bridges. There's
Yeah.
that one quote about is it which explorer got to South America or,
And burnt the ship.
Central only place we were going was forward. There was no going back. And sometimes that's the only way to push you forward to keep going. So, what about that entrepreneurial mindset? Let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. I've liked all my jobs. I really like the people that I worked with, every place that I had, I got friends to this day that, from past jobs and I really, uh, enjoyed all the guys. But when it comes to whether I loved my job, I don't think
Mhm.
ever loved a job where I can think of getting up in the morning saying, "Oh, I can't wait to go back. Well, can't wait to go to work." You know, the job I have now, I like it. I love the people that I work with, but the lifestyle probably isn't the greatest. I leave for 2 weeks at a time, down miles underground, working in a dusty, dark environment that could be dangerous. Um, but
Yes,
then
that kid is
also,
dangerous. You're way underground
yeah,
there.
I'm way underground.
Yeah, yeah.
But then
And
even
Ross has a we could do a whole other podcast on mining and the
yes,
stories of the stories of underground or something like that. We'll have to do an episode sometime, a fun one on that. But it definitely there's a different type of lifestyle with
yes,
that. So that was the mining job,
the
you call it?
financial industry, and it's the same. Not too, and there's a lot of like great leaders within our company that basically say what I'm about to say now. It's that I love going out and selling life insurance. I don't love,
Right.
doing financial plans, and I like it. Like, don't get me wrong. I enjoy what I do every
Yeah.
day. It gets me out of bed and stuff like that. But what I think they loved and what they say is, they like the lifestyle that it's going to bring them. Being your own boss, making your own decisions, getting to a point where your business is big enough that it's self-sustaining, and then you get to go do those things. There's a
Yeah.
leader in our company that, for the last 5 years, he's done nothing but go around, and like, he's a photographer. He's been to Africa. He says, I don't love the fact that I'm selling life insurance or mutual funds or
Mhm.
RSPs and all that kind of stuff. He says it's the lifestyle that he loves, and the fact that, mm, by doing this, that gave him the opportunity to do the stuff that he loves. And so that's how I'm looking at this too. I love golfing. I love traveling. I'm going to do that for the things that I love. And I,
Mhm.
being on that entrepreneurial thing, I don't think I can do that as with the career that I'm doing right now. Having that, having
Yes.
that kind of freedom. I do make good money. I'm not
Mhm.
complaining. I don't want anybody that I work with watching this podcast thinking that I don't love my job or that I'm gonna, whatever. But
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
it's my mindset, and whether it's
Mhm.
over my job, I love doing a good job. I love the recognition that I get
Yes.
for doing a good job, and I'm just
Mhm.
going to carry this over into the financial industry and by helping people and getting to those goals.
Yes. Well, and I think, like you said, with mining or with teaching, I mean, any job that has a salary, you can work really, really hard, but you don't get paid anymore. Or in education, you can work really long hours, but you don't get paid anymore because you coached every night, every week, and went 300 hours, extra hours over the year, or you spend all your weekends at school. Whereas sometimes that entrepreneurial option gives you the harder you work, when it's good, not that it's ever easy. Entrepreneurship is not easy. There's lots of risk involved in depending on the business that you go into, right? It's a little bit scary, but when you work hard, the return, right? I remember in one of the businesses I had, I was like, wow, like this was a big month. You work hard and it goes well. You get rewarded. You sometimes get sometimes more recognition in some of the entrepreneurial. But I mean, if you're in business by yourself, you're also the cheerleader and the manager and the
Mhm.
HR person and
Um,
you're everything. So you have to just have meetings with yourself to have the pep talks and those types of things. So it's just a different mindset, and I'm excited for students in the future to have that financial literacy course to
mhm.
just even learn what entrepreneurship is, because I think the society that we live in now, the jobs that are available didn't exist when we were younger, right? Who would have been a social media influencer? Like the
Well, yeah,
cameras, like either pop the Polaroid out and you had to shake it to see what
yeah,
was on there. You had to
exactly.
send it away, and in 4 or 3 weeks, pictures came back.
Yeah,
That's led to a whole other generation of, it was just different. Where did your parents know where you were? Probably not. They couldn't track you. You were
no,
outside doing something,
exactly.
probably with friends somewhere, or you were driving a tractor in a field because you grew up on a farm, and that's just
Mhm.
what you went to work to do
Yeah,
all of those things. But I think it's knowing that those are different things that are out there. The other thing I found interesting that you said a few times is you saw yourself as a blue collar worker, that these were the jobs that I could have. So why do you think that you had that kind of mindset that this is what I do rather than I could do different things?
I think maybe more of a comfort zone. I think that's all I did. I never really got out of the box as far as doing anything. Like, we always talk about public speaking. I remember totally mortified with public speak. And one of the things I remember at church as an elder, you had to go up and read. Uh, you do one of the readings, like the Old Testament reading or the
Right.
epistle reading or whatever. They came and asked me, and I
Yeah.
said yes. And I just remember going up there, and I found it the most terrifying thing that I ever did in my life. You know, But then after a while, like you said, after a while of doing it, whenever it is your turn to do it on Sunday, it got easier. Same thing with my business now. They had me get up and do like a case client study and things for teaching some of the newer people that had joined the business. And I remember being like not sleeping the night before, or I was like
Yes.
terrified. And I think that's what basically kind of kept me in that blue collar, you know, kind of habit. I'd go to a job, I would and hide for the first couple months, if that makes sense, go do my job. I'm
Mhm.
not going to be speaking out. I'm not going to be that guy that's, uh,
Yep.
you know, giving their opinion on when I've just started, but I just kind of hold back, hide in
Yeah.
the shadows until uh, I got enough confidence or the people kind of like me enough that I could just give my opinion on maybe how a job could be done differently or whatever. But that was my kind of mindset, not this, you basically, you're getting in front of people, you're telling people your opinions, you can't just hide in the background and let Lisa do everything.
Mhm.
And that is a big change for me as far as getting into that entrepreneurial kind of, this is, you got to step out of the box. You got to do things that you've never done before. If you want to make your life better, you had kind of mentioned it before. Like if you keep on doing the same things, your life is just going to keep stay the same. Not that I have a bad life, but if I want my life to be better, I got to do things that are different in order to make it how I always wanted. I think a lot of people, we
Yeah.
always grow up and we have all these dreams of, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And then once we hit that age of, we hit the 30s and, your dreams kind of get beaten into the ground by that time. And you just kind of realize that, this is my life, but it isn't. It, you can
Yeah.
make your life whatever you want it to be, I think. And that is a big thing that I needed to learn and kind of do. And I think, I know when they first approached us to kind of start and get into the financial industry, I know that they were looking for Lisa. I know that's why they came over. They thought, Lisa's a real estate agent.
Yeah. For
She'll be
sure.
great at doing this, blah, 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 blah. And I think I really have
Yeah.
to give it to Lisa. Lisa actually like stood back and decided, if we're going to do this, Ross needs to do this. So
Mhm.
she's a good support. And
Yeah.
now we're basically equals in the business, but
Yeah.
I know she held back at the start, letting me get into the limelight of it and stuff like that. So it is a big change for me. And I think, and if anything, it's actually helped me at my other jobs. I think, it's made me a better person as far as I'm a managing people
Right.
on my crew, having the right mentality. I've learned a lot from this. It doesn't only relate to finance, but when you grow in that mindset, it it helps you in every part of your life, I think, right?
Yes. Yes. I think that's the more guests that I talk to, it keeps coming back to, oh, you can hear Ella running behind me now. Uh, the more guests that I've talked to, the more I realize that mindset is really it's really key to so many pieces, whether it's your job, whether it's relationships, whether it's money or health or sports team. All of those different pieces are connected to how you see the world and how your perception of it or changes how you interact with the world, right? And if you can flip it that little bit and shift it, then it opens up a whole new world of possibilities. And like you said, what you learn in one job ripples out into pretty much everything else that you do in the other parts of your life. And I think as we get older and more experience, I should just say as we get more experienced in life, we learn to start to balance it, right? We need to definitely find a job that you love or that you enjoy or that you're doing for the people that you love, because you know that's going to create the time with family. And then how do you manage time for your personal life, and how do you look after your finances, and how do you look after your health? It's a more holistic approach to life. And so I think now is a good time to transition into my favorite question. And Ross is probably one of my biggest supporters on the podcast. So he knows the question that's coming next. But it is, what is the best thing that's never happened? So, what's that thing that you thought was going to happen? It didn't, but it really pushed you closer towards your purpose and led you to helping people.
I've watched your episode and I've thought about this question every time you've asked it on your other podcast, and
Yeah.
it's still the tricky question. Like I've thought about it,
It is.
and me and Lisa were kind of talking about it, and she kind of says, "Well, the best thing that never happened was saying no to that first financial, uh, our friend coming over and doing that first financial needs analysis sorry for us. That is the best thing
Right.
that if I would have said no or I got grouched up, where would we be today?" But there's
Yeah.
lots of examples of even thinking to yourself, if I could go back in time, I would do this different. I would do this different. But I think where I am in my life right now, I think there's too many things that could have changed. I'm rather happy where I am right now. If you go back in time and say,
Yeah.
wow, we could still be in this house that we paid 100,000 for and our mortgage would be paid off. But if we were still there, their
Right.
real estate license and then this wouldn't have happened. This wouldn't have happened. There's all these things that are, you know, everything's linked together. So I think just happy that that day I didn't say no. That's the best thing that didn't happen
Yes.
to me. I'm
Yes.
not
You
sure if
didn't
that
let your current mindset impede that. No, I think that's a good point. You didn't let the even though it was somebody's coming over, they're gonna ask you some personal questions. It's about money, that takes time. You didn't say no. So the best thing that never happened was this the saying, "Okay, you can come over. I'll
yeah.
listen." And I'll probably be skeptical off the start because
uh,
that's often how it goes. We're all a little skeptical off the start. But then I always find it interesting how you like you said, you get pushed in that direction. You could have stayed in that house and paid it off, but then Lisa wouldn't have got her real estate license or
Yeah.
this wouldn't have happened. So I always find it interesting what those nevers are that sort of push you closer to your purpose. And Katie had said, "Do people manage to avoid their purpose? Does the universe not push, or does God not push you in that direction as some people as much? So how do you find that purpose and what you love to do? And that I like how you talk about it is a job, but you are helping people change their lives and the lives of their children. Like what you
Mhm.
do." Not only impacts the immediate people that you see, it also ripples out for generations into the future. Because if that parent teaches their child about budgeting or talks more positively about money, and not that talking positively about it eliminates all of the challenges that
Yeah.
a loss of a job or
No,
COVID
exactly.
happens and you're unemployed or you can't find the job. But if those small things that you share with people that you've taught your own kids, those are all going to ripple out for generations into the future. So you're impacting, yeah, people all over and people that you haven't met by helping the people that you have met. And you mentioned in all of your different jobs that you had lots of different friends and people that you've met along the way, and I found that that's always been one of my favorite things is the people that I meet along the way and the chance to learn from them and talk to them. And I think if these things hadn't have happened, I never would have met these people or connected with those people. So I think that's part of the interconnectedness of life.
Because it's funny that you're talking about emotion because we always make the joke, at the office that
Yeah.
sometimes we're not money managers, we're emotion managers. So when people are phoning us worried about their finances, I always tell them there's the mutual fund companies that we work with, stuff like that. That's where all the smart people are managing your money. I'm here to manage your emotions. You know, when the
Mhm.
market's down, telling you, reassuring you that it's going to be okay. You don't need this money right away and just talking them through it. Like a lot of people, like emotions are a big thing. People rely on their emotions to warn them about everything. You know what I'm trying to say? Like emotions are a big part of a
Yeah. Yeah.
person's
Yeah.
psyche, and we're there to help them manage those emotions.
What you said just made me think of Chip and Dan Heath's book, The Switch. And um, they talk about when you're trying to make a connection with people, there's the rational brain and there's the emotional brain. And they said, envision the emotional brain like an elephant. Like it will go where it wants and it will do what it wants. And then you have this little rider on top of the elephant that's attempting to direct them. And the rider can make that elephant go in a certain direction for a certain period of time, but eventually the rider's going to get tired and they're going to go back where
Hmm.
the elephant wanted to. Because even though you rationally think about all of these different things, it's often that emotional piece. And I think with money, there's often a lot of emotion maybe we don't realize it, but
Yeah.
I want to feel better. So I'm going to buy something, or
Yeah.
I'm going to do this because I'm upset. So I need that, or I'm going to eat this because I'm tired, or there's
Yeah.
nothing better to eat. But it's that whole rider and elephant, right? The rational brain can keep you going for so long in one direction, but if you can harness the power of the emotions, then you can make those connections and you
Mhm.
can flip your mindset with regard to money. So
Exactly.
that transitions us into the looking back. What would you say to your younger self if you were to go back, late teens, early 20s? What's something that you would tell yourself at that point?
I think when we talk about that, I think that pain of change is something that I would tell myself, don't be afraid to take more risk and that the pain is temporary, with all the things I know. Maybe I would have not only did blue collar jobs, not that there's anything wrong with blue collar jobs, by the way,
No.
when I
Yes.
talk about blue collar jobs, I had, like I said, I could do a whole podcast of stories about my blue collar jobs and, all the things that happened to me that I wouldn't trade for the world because they're such life experiences of some of the stuff that I've done and what I've seen. But just taking those chances, not being afraid to get up in public, speak, just stuff like that. I think I've
Yeah.
I've always been kind of,
Yeah.
like Lisa, my wife. She's always been the one that she sings. She's up in front of always was a singer, always kind of in the front. I was always kind of hanging back in the
Mhm.
background, watching the kids, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I think I kind of got used to playing that role, and stuff like that. But I think my future self would probably tell my past self to, you're pretty charismatic yourself. You can get out there and I'm not sure how to say it, but, you know, cause a change in the world. You can,
Yes. You could make a difference. You have an
yeah, make a
impact.
difference. That's the word. Thanks. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I always those are the what it was Allison that said they're the soul questions that really get at the heart of it, the best thing that never happened, and what would you tell your past self? I thought maybe you were gonna do kind of a funny version and be like, "Make sure you put away 10% of everything that you
No,
make," is what I
and
thought
that
you were
that is
maybe going
another
to
thing that
say of the
I
story.
would tell myself actually. Now that you, thanks for the reminder, but yeah, also that put away some
Yeah,
money
yeah,
because you,
yes.
you knew what I was like in
Pay
my younger
yourself, pay
years.
your
There wasn't a lot of money being.
No, no. We grew up in the same not in the same town, but, I started dating my husband right or shortly after that, you and Lisa got together, and so, I've known Ross for over 20 years, so we have lots of stories together, and you've had an amazing journey of different jobs, and certainly I don't want anyone to listen to the podcast and say, "Oh, what are they saying about blue collar?" That is n not
No,
the intent at
that's
all. I was just curious about the mindset of why we sometimes think we're one or the other. Or I think it was Allison that said, she came back from caring for her father after he had passed away from cancer. And then she had her mother went through a battle with cancer and her mother is okay. She said, but she took a year off from work. She worked at a Harvard or not a Harvard law firm, a New York law firm. But she came back and she said, I didn't want my dream job anymore, like, it wasn't what I wanted, she said, but I felt like it was what I was supposed to do, so that's always what I'm curious is why does society make us feel that we should do certain things, or why do we
mhm.
only see this as the one path when there's multiple pathways, and like you said, change is what gets us to those different pieces, and the one quote that stood out to me when you'd said that a piece about change is everything you wanted on life is on the other side of fear. It's on the other side of change. You just have to be brave enough to step out there and try it out. And life is change. So if it's not where you thought you'd be, then take another step and try something different and find your path through there. So you kind of tied it together. You said, what would your future self say to your past self? But I'm curious, what in 20 years, when we're sitting on the deck of somewhere in the warm summer air and not being eaten alive by mosquitoes in the Saskatchewan summers, but say in 20 years or 30 years, what would future Ross say to you right now in where you are?
I think future Ross would try to reassure me that everything's going to be okay. I think future Ross is going to be leaving a legacy for their family. And that's one of the things that I want to really, one of my big goals is leaving a legacy, for my family. I know when you talk about leaving a legacy, when we pass away, maybe I'll have grandkids that'll remember me. But after that, I might come up in a story or whatever. But if you really make an
Mhm.
impact on leaving a legacy behind for you, or whether that be financially, was what I'm hoping, leaving that legacy behind
Yeah.
for the kids, that I want to be remembered for multiple generations, just not once my grandkids go away, I'm just another name on the tombstone as they go walking by. Uh, and that's one of the things that I really want to leave behind. And I think future self talking back is going to tell me I did a good job.
Nice.
That makes sense.
And I can't wait to be there to celebrate with you when we can be like, "Remember that podcast we
Yeah.
recorded?"
Remember the
And
first
30
word?
years
Yeah.
later, look at the legacy
Yeah.
that it is living, the living legacy right now, and I think that I really appreciate that forward. I read a book called Long Path, and it was about how we are definitely shaped by our past and we're shaped by our parents and their experiences. And that actually shapes us in the moment now. And if we can sort of recognize how we're being influenced, that allows us to look at where we are now and then where we want to go, because the decisions we make now have lasting impact for
Mhm.
generations into the future. It may seem insignificant now, but like you said, you can create a legacy to leave behind. You can create those stories and the memories to have an impact. So your grandchildren talk about you for generations into the future. And remember when great, 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 great grandpa Ross did this
Mhm.
or achieved those things. And so that's something that any one of us can do and it's finding your purpose and setting that goal and deciding that I'm going to take steps forward to do that. It might be scary to push publish on the podcast, but you have great family members that are like, just push publish or the
Yeah.
title. Don't stress about the title anymore.
Mhm.
I think we never realize how much the people around us make a difference in where we go, and I think it's an exciting journey ahead. So I think those are all of my questions. We've talked about habits. We've talked about the best thing that never happened, the looking forward, the looking back. Anything else that we haven't chatted about in this episode? Because I'm sure Ross will be back for future
Oh,
episodes.
yeah.
We could have a whole podcast on just what we listen to on podcasts and books. Usually we have those conversations like after the volleyball match at about 9:30 to
Yeah.
11 at night when we catch up to visit. But we always have lots of conversations about favorite podcasts and things
Mhm.
to listen to. But anything else that stood out from our conversation or anything I didn't ask you that you wish somebody had asked you? I always like Jason's question, like, did you want $10 million? That was his question of when I said, what's something that someone's never asked you?
Yeah.
And he came up with
No,
that I think it was a good question, but is there any question or anything else you'd like to add?
I don't know. I think we've covered a lot of stuff today, when we
Yes.
I
And I
think,
think
I just wanna say what a great job I think you're doing on these podcasts. I think that's, you know,
thank you.
it's not easy, and I think that's stepping out when we talk about mindset, you know, just being able to do something like a podcast, or like I said, when I get up and have to do public speaking I've spoken in front of as many as like 500 people before, and just, you know, I think we should just congratulate ourselves on our mindset of where we've come in the last, little while.
Yes, yes. I think about where we would have started years ago back in our hometown or we met in Davidson and think about would we have ever imagined that I'm not sure how many years ago that was, but probably in the last century when we lived there. But I think, like you said, we need to stack those wins. We've made lots of changes, and I think to the viewers that are listening or watching this episode out there, just pause for a moment and think about the progress that you've made. Sometimes it's hard to see that progress when you're in it. You're not quite at your goal yet. You're still in that. But all of those steps that you take in that in between are the story of your life. And they are what make the difference and propel you ahead into the future. And there may be change ahead. There may be some nevers that push you back towards your purpose. But I
Yeah.
think that is the bigger picture at work, helping to navigate you through life and putting the right people in your paths along the way. So thank you for being a guest. I know we've talked about this for several months now. So
Yeah.
thank you for coming on the show. And we will be back in the future with more episodes talking with Ross. And if you have any questions for him about budgeting or life insurance or suggestions for what do you look for in setting goals for financial independence, you can check the show notes down below. We will put all of Ross and Lisa's contact information there. And if you have questions for us, by all means, email me at stephanie@mindgamelevelupyourlife.com, and we will plan to do some future episodes because I'm pretty sure we need to do one on our favorite podcasts and favorite books that we've read,
Oh, yeah.
because Ross will suggest books to me and I'll suggest books to him, and then we'll listen to those and have some conversations. So let us know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for being on this episode, and thanks everyone for watching.
All right. Thanks, Seth.
And in the end, it's the choices you make along the way and the habits you choose that shape your life. It takes a lifetime to gain the experiences that make you who you are. And the privilege of reflecting back on the journey is recognizing the moments when you chose to embrace change and step through your fears. It's appreciating the mindset shifts moving you closer to your goals and the resilience to reset when it was time for a change. What resonated for me was Ross's reminder that we can leave a legacy, not only for the generations we know today, but we can also impact generations of our family that will only know us by the legacy we leave behind. And as one of my motivational speakers asked the other day during my lunchtime walk, the question really is, what's the difference you want to make in your lifetime before our time on Earth is done? What's the difference that you want to make? The next step, align your goal with your purpose. Reach out to the people around you who can help you create the plan, and then take one step forward. Remember to celebrate and appreciate the progress you make along the way, because your future self will thank you for deciding to start. The goal of the Mind Game podcast is to connect you with ideas and people who can help you level up your life. If you'd like to learn more about money mindset, setting up a budget, or mapping out your financial freedom, be sure to check out the show notes for details, including Ross's contact info. Thanks for listening. Here's your episode 16 Mind Game Challenge. Share this episode and pause for a moment and consider the progress you've made. What's one dream you have to level up your future? Hashtag it, level up your life. Thank you for choosing to listen to Mind Game, a podcast to level up your life. We hope that you've enjoyed the insights, inspiration, and habits shared in this episode. Your support is a game changer, and we are incredibly grateful to be on this journey with such an amazing community of listeners. If you have any wonders, questions, or suggestions about this or future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media and share your feedback. Remember, you can catch all of our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps us bring valuable content to you, our listeners. Don't want to miss the next episode? Join our Facebook group and email list and get ahead of the game. Until next time, remember to mind the game so that you can get out of your own way and level up your life.